A person had a dream, which is about a situation at Figueira. They dreamed about a very large hand that opened and released a white bird on the top of the crystal hill, and the white bird was flying while the sun was shining intensively. That white bird, which was released and was flying, symbolizes the stage which was fulfilled here in Figueira. Now a new stage begins. That white bird symbolizes the collection of souls which were rescued. And the other stage that begins is to take those rescued souls towards contact with the planetary centers. So first there's a work of rescue of the soul, and then the work of approaching those rescued souls of the planetary centers. So this is the work of Figueira from now on. At this moment in which this was visualized, there was a conjuncture of two planets which made this transition easier for Figueira. So that's why this transition was seen now, because the energy of this conjuncture made this comprehension easier. At this moment they're working on the situation of Figueira, Pluto and Saturn. Pluto is a planet which has the keys for our contact with the intraterrestrial worlds and therefore the planetary centers. And Saturn, for an evolved group, it means help in the control of the forces of matter according to an evolutionary purpose. So this possibility of contact with the intraterrestrial planets and this possibility of the forces of matter and the full moon might have stimulated and impelled this change in work. This dream of the white bird, which means all the souls which were rescued, it's about approaching these souls to the centers, the intraterrestrial centers, so that they have evolution on this planet beyond the normal evolution of souls, which receive stimulation in the world of souls but have a lot to learn with these planetary centers. And about dreams, this took place in the crystal hill, because from the beginning that is a spot where certain energies anchor here. So the crystal hill symbolizes a place of clearness, a place for contact. And a person asked how we must act in the face of diseases which we do not understand, because not only unknown diseases are emerging, we don't know much about them, but also people can get sick and nobody can understand exactly what is happening. If we don't know how to diagnose something like this, we can observe in what part of the body signs are starting to show up, the etheric center of their body, if that is around the center of the head, or the heart center, or the belly center, etc. So first we observe in which area that showed up. That showed up near some etheric center, as the centers have influence on the organs of the body. That disease could have emerged because of some malfunctioning of that specific center. So if someone has something in the area of in their chest area, we can observe what the person is doing about their heart center, which is an etheric center. If the person has something in their throat, we can see what they are doing in that region. So we can see that center and the action, the attitude of that person in the face of that center, what that person is doing, so that center is not developing naturally. One more observation to reach the diagnosis of this treatment is to compare the person's attitude and the person's personality with the characteristics of that disease, the pain that they have, the sensations of suffering that they have, because that is always linked to personality and the person's attitude. So depending on the kind of pain, depending on the way that disease is presented, we can compare the attitudes of that person with that. And this is a study that is done. We can't teach anyone how to do this, but if we pay attention, we can see that those symptoms are mirrored on the personality, and the person's attitudes are a symbol of those symptoms. These things are linked, so thus we can reach the diagnosis. And then we can know how those centers, those etheric parts of the body, have influence on the organs, and we can help so that this happens, so that those etheric centers can work. None of us is free from diseases because of the old karmic part, and also we would have to have certain experiences or practices that would place us in a situation of health, but we can't fulfill all these practices yet. We can fulfill one of them, which is to feel great joy when we have a responsibility. So all of us at a certain point receive the responsibility, or the evolutionary plan gives us a task. Look, you're responsible for this. The joy when you receive a responsibility, that is immunity against disease. So when you receive a responsibility and you start remembering about your limitations, you start arguing with that responsibility that you received, that is the path for disease, which can come at that moment or later on. It could come later. And that is always around that center, which at this moment, it could be mentally. So one day you have some disease in your head or emotionally from a different part of the body. So the joy in the face of responsibility, of you being fully grateful and joyful when you receive a task, this represents a great part of your immunity. That depends on the formation of the individual, on the path that they have, on the path of service and the preparation that they have done. But it's humanly possible for you to feel a great joy when you receive a responsibility and not feel other things. And the other point that would make us immune and does not depend on us consciously would be for us to cooperate with more evolved worlds. So if our lives, our field of expression, our field of service is limited to this world, then we're up to the karma of the world and we can be immune from diseases. But innerly, with the development of the soul, with the development of the monad, or the body of light, our collaboration begins with more advanced worlds. Our souls, innerly in the inner planes, our body of light, our monads begin to cooperate with those worlds. And when that cooperation begins, that is the other factor for immunity. So we can't solve this consciously. It's necessary for our inner world to begin that collaboration, and then the being is immune. And the third thing that allows us to be immune from diseases, besides the joy for responsibilities, cooperation with more advanced worlds, the third one is for us to understand the evolutionary point that we are experiencing, because we don't understand it. We don't value the evolutionary point that we're going through, or we think that we are too evolved, that we are beyond it. So this prevents us from understanding exactly our evolutionary point, and that has laws that we can understand. And if we are in the comprehension of our point, if we are not considering ourselves less or more, if we are in the right comprehension, we have a reason for being immune to diseases. So this is why we are not yet free from diseases, because these things are not yet formed within us. They're not completed. They are in development. So our work now is not only to rescue souls, because the souls that had to be rescued are symbolized in that white bird and they're flying. Now we need to take care of our beings, we have to keep these things clear, because the work now is the soul at a certain security, at a certain condition of light, to go towards these planetary centers. So our mind needs this, needs to know what kind of work is being done within us, what is the movement done within us. And as we have a sector for health and healing, this sector, beyond all the guidelines they could give us from the normal point of view of health. From now on, the sector could collaborate so that these inactivities could be developed in the individual, work with the individual so that they may recognize certain evolutionary points and help the individual to recognize the laws that they must deal with, live, and eventually, through systems, practices that the sector of health and healing can find out, and then help that individual to find themselves comfortable in this collaboration that they can give as a soul to these inner worlds, these extraplanetary worlds, or these more evolved worlds. So in this new stage after the bird flu, the sector of health and healing is also helping us, must also collaborate so that this discipline may be installed, these three things from the spiritual point of view. That is, for us to receive a responsibility with freedom. Responsibility also means if someone shows you something, you should recognize it with joy and not react to it against something that was shown to you. So the attitude must change so that we don't remain in an old stage, so we don't continue in a stage that is gone and which would have no longer energy to keep going, because our attitude in the face of responsibilities, this will help our cooperation with inner worlds. Because if we don't have joy and don't have availability, dedication, that which is our immediate task, our concrete task, that cooperation with distant worlds will be for later, because things always begin here, in the plane that we are aware of. So if you replace and think about our limitations in the face of the task, if we place availability and will, this will determine our cooperation with superior things. This is what will determine our cooperation with these other worlds, which is where souls and the bodies of light will collaborate. So there are many incomprehensible diseases whose diagnoses haven't been reached, and those are things that appear due to the lack of this development, that we are not living these things, experiencing these things. At the moment that a soul was rescued, at the moment that a soul was elevated to a vibratory level, that they won't be disintegrated due to external things, nuclear things and such. If that soul was placed in a level of security, that soul is experiencing different things now. The process of that soul is no longer to be rescued, but a service that they will offer always in a world eventually more advanced than this one. And here, a person heard that each sector of Figueira represents a lineage, and they would like to know what is the lineage of the short path. This work of the short path is something that was installed here in the last floor, and people would go in there, stay for 2 days, 3 days or more, depending on the person's need and the rhythm that they assumed at work. So there's an external rhythm between physical activities, mental activities, sleep, especially sleep, and the practice of mantras. So there is a conjuncture in which the individual can not pay attention to their own ego. It's not a total silence, because the ego could emerge with a lot of strength if the individual is not prepared. And it's not this life full of things that is done outside that space. That is an activity, a rhythm that the individual does for a while and eventually leads them, if they can and if they want to, for them to forget a little bit about themselves, because it's as if they would enter something that would flow. They don't need to organize anything. There's already something organized that takes place. They just need to enter. So they have all the movements that they need. Sleep, mantra studies, food. They have this whole flow of life without worrying about it for it to happen. It's as if when I entered that door, we would enter a current, a flow, and we just need to follow it. So this is one of the ways for us to forget about ourselves, because we don't need to think about that rhythm. We don't need to settle anything. We don't need to organize anything. We need to enter a rhythm that exists, a flow that is already moving. We just need to enter it, and the rhythm will take us. We won't be automatic there, because we have the periods of sleep, long periods of sleep. And during them, the being has all the possibilities of refining their own rhythm, or presenting a rhythm through a dream, through a vision, through a situation that is created in the being. All the inner work that takes place shows the individual a different rhythm. So this is what takes place there. If we enter that rhythm, if we are just following the rhythm, we will experience the ego won't bother, the ego won't disturb. We'll go through the experience of joining a flow, and our ego will become serene. Of course that not everyone experiences this in the short path, because eventually they enter that experience that they still need to control their bodies, watch their ego, they still need to adapt. But there's an energy and a possibility, and if we practice in that surrender to that current, to that rhythm, we can get to the moment of living consciously. And then we can have a different experience. what is really moving us, what the center that we have within is, which is not this ego of what must be done. That in that work, how can we manage this besides the external environment and the rhythm that everyone will do voluntarily, because those who do this, they're not obliged to, they wanted to do it. So if they're there, they should enter this current. But it's about the individual to have their minds, their feelings towards their inner side, because there's nothing to distract them from it. Even if they're in some activity, it's not an activity that will remove them from their center, that will distract them from not being able to think and polarize in that inner center. So within it, we practice it. We learn to live an external life, experiencing an external activity without not forgetting it, and keeping our minds, our attention in that concentration. And this is helped by practicing mantras that we do at 3 a.m., 11 a.m., and 7 p.m. So this practice of mantras, these 3 moments of the day in which all these things are confirmed. Because the strength of mantras and our dedication towards that practice, that confirms this whole polarization. This short path is only possible after we have already lived in our own lives what we call as the large path, after we have strived a lot to dominate ourselves, after we have strived a lot to overcome our own limitations, after we have fought a lot with ourselves, complained a lot, be very unhappy, so we are in the long path. Things don't end when you are like this. So the people who have already lived all of this and who are tired of the large path, they are ready, prepared to have an experience like this. But the short path is not only done with that rhythm, that is a training, a way for us to be in contact with that path, that simple path that is only about us being towards and not forget about this and always confirm it. It's a way for you to be in contact with it so that you can continue doing this in your life. Because if you are really in the short path, if you have your attention within yourself, if you're looking in the right direction, this is what the short path is. So all the circumstances of your life, the things that happen to you, they will be dimension to it. They will reflect the situation. And it's in this situation in which our external life is limited to the essential. Because if you are concentrated, if you want inner life, and if you have all your forces polarized within, your external life will be reduced to the essential. Because you won't attract the superfluous. You won't create situations with your imagination or with your mind that may bring which is not about your reality at that moment. So this is the path and the situation in which we can be very receptive to this radiation, to these suggestions from our inner worlds, and so that we may understand what our inner world would present to our lives. So this short path is very current for us at this moment and very interesting. But the person's question was not what the short path is. We're just providing this information so that we can now answer their question. They asked what lineage that sector is in, because we have 7 lineages and we're always within one of them. As we have beings that belong to different lineages, contemplatives, warriors, as we have souls that belong to different lineages, the short path is a synthesis of all lineages. If the short path would begin to desiccate the lineages, it will be the long path that is done. There must be all the lineages synthesized so that monads of any tendency may find what they need. So we can say that that sector is in the contemplative lineage, although contemplation is included there. Contemplation is included there because by entering that rhythm, even though you may not be stopped in that orderly rhythm, an essential rhythm, not having any superfluous things, you can enter the contemplative world. So this is the first lineage that comes to mind, which is included there, but it's not exclusive there. And the lineage of healing could also come to us because it's a moment of healing. It's a moment in which you're seeking this alignment with your inner worlds, your superior worlds, so the lineage of healing is present, and thus all other lineages are present there if you observe. But the lineage of warriors, this tendency that we can have towards removing all the obstacles within our beings so that we may fulfill the evolutionary plan. This lineage of warriors has a very great force because we would need to overcome and transcend certain habits, certain rhythms, certain thoughts of the mind. So the energy of the lineage of warriors is very present there. The short path itself, this situation of you being concentrated on what you must, on what you want to get, this summons the warrior energy. So all the lineages, the one that can emerge the most there due to the own need of people is the lineage of warriors. That energy of breaking obstacles, this is an energy or a lineage that begins to emerge within our lives and enter our lives as assistance, as help, when we are seeking greater expansions of consciousness. Otherwise that warrior strength won't come. It's necessary for us to seek expansions of consciousness that are greater than the ones that we have had, so that this warrior strength, this energy, may be available. So within the short path, it's much simpler from the evolutionary point in which we are to count on the energy of warriors, for example, than to count on other energies of other lineages that would need more work within us for them to manifest more freely. We will see then how we can open ourselves and be very available for this warrior energy. How we can be receive this energy of the lineage of warriors and thus have certain obstacles to our evolution and growth so that they can be dissolved. First, to be vigilant and attentive to what is happening. So in the short path, although there may be a current that you enter, that you participate and you elevate it, you should be very attentive with your minds, very attentive, not asleep. You should keep your attention very awake for each step that you take within it, for everything that takes place. So this vigilance, this must begin something natural within it, so that the individual can emerge, so that they can collaborate with this lineage that will dissolve obstacles within themselves towards a superior evolution. And the other point that we would need to see, because when we enter a rhythm like that, everything is teaching us. Even a person that makes noises opening a door, if we are attentive and if we notice that, that will teach us something at that moment. At that moment, we will learn something. If we hear the sound of a bird, we can learn something with that. If we are in that attention, that teaches us something. Anything that may happen, it summons knowledge, it teaches you something. Anyone that you meet in the corridor, that moment a knowledge comes. When you see that person, you have learned something. You see how the situation is rich, what kind of energy is available for us. If we enter this movement, and if we enter this current, and if we don't resist to this rhythm, that which is our selfishness or our ego or our preferences will diminish. And if it diminishes, you have more possibility of placing your attention on things that are beyond your ego, things that are not as material as your human ego. Your human ego is a block of matter, so we can have our minds to some contact with more immaterial things, and detachment for our habits, for our preferences, because you don't know who you are going to see, who you're going to find within there, who you're going to see. So there must be some detachment for everything, because if you are not detached enough or willing to detach oneself, you will waste your time reacting to people, because it's a small environment, you're going to see people all the time, and then you start to react, and then you waste your time. You will waste the opportunity of creating and really developing other things. This energy that we attract, this energy of warriors, This gives us the great possibility of being in contact innerly or even externally with more advanced things than us. Either they're concept situations that we're not fully prepared, but if they emerged, then you must find the courage of assuming it, even if you're not prepared, even if you do not understand the person, but you understood, you saw that that person has something to tell you, has something to collaborate for your evolution. So you see, you're already detached of oneself to receive what it must give you. Anyway, this is what is worked and developed there. And these things will be clear for us as we live these things, because many creatures have had their experiences, and the experience of those people is what will enlighten the work and will bring towards the path, the short path, more experience, more clearness. So this lineage of warriors is not only very necessary because we need to be a warrior in the face of ourselves, our reactions, and this is very present there, very available, but all the other lineages are also available there. And this is an experience that we can have during our stay there, what the present energies were, what the lineages were in our observation, how we were in the face of a situation of healing, and how when we were at a situation of a ritual, a priestly situation. So it's an experience that can be very rich for us. Anyway, the short path is a very subtle way of reaching a different state. And this can take place without being perceived because it's all very subtle.